Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Wolverine podcast here, Monday, May 12th. And I got to tell you what, Clayton Sayfie last week declared it the start of summer, and it is feeling like the start of summer. The weather is beautiful here in the state of Michigan. I got the sun's out, the birds are chirping, the pollen is out, which is something I'm dealing with right now. I'm sure a lot of people are as well, but good to be back here. Anthony Broom here with the aforementioned Clayton Sayfie. And also Chris Ballas. Fellas, welcome back.
Good to be back, and it is beautiful outside. Got to ride outside a little bit today, got a little sun. So, man, I love that. I love this time of year. There's something about the summer. So, nothing like football season, guys, but don't wish the summer away. That's how I always say.
Yeah, and we got to clean up, Anthony, from the podcast on Thursday. Like, the Pope had been selected about 30 minutes before we went on. And ABC News had reported he was a Cubs fan. He's actually a White Sox fan, as many people know and pointed out in the comments. So a turn of events. I saw the video of him at the World Series in 2005. So he is a legit sports fan, which is kind of cool, even though it's not our team. But figured we would start with that, just get it out of the way, because a lot of people were commenting on the video.
I'm a little worried about that as a Tigers fan, right? That the Sox have that, but there's no saving the Sox team. What was it? Remember the Titanic thing? God himself couldn't sink this ship. Well, God himself couldn't save the White Sox. You don't say that, because then guess what? They make a run. They're going to win 30 games in a row. You just watch, because I said that. So, hey, KC bounced back. We'll see if the White Sox do.
And the Tigers were dead at this. I mean, most of last summer, and then they made a run.
Absolutely. Yep. You never know.
Yeah, I'd bet against that. Keep your prayers coming on the south side of Chicago. With the dawn of the summer months, with the wrapping up of a magazine we're currently doing right now, we're about to shift our focus, fellas, to our football preview magazine. Spring football's in the books. We pretty much know, we have an idea what this roster is, and now we get to break it all down, and you guys get to experience the fruits of all that labor. Our football preview magazine is in production over at the Wolverine. Be sure to pre-order your copy before June 17th to get the free shipping. And of course, there's always a little discount for those of you who are already subscribed here. So details on that can be found in the description below. As you see on screen, Bryce Underwood on the cover this year, kind of kicking off a new era of the program. So head on over to the bit.ly/UM show. That's going to take you right to the page you need to get to pre-order your football preview. And it's going to be jam-packed and a lot of good stuff in there. And I know production is already underway for some of us. We all move towards that later this week. We are also brought to you today by our friends at HomefieldApparel.com. We've been talking them up for years, it feels like at this point, and we love them. Summer months, I like to wear stuff that's breathable. I like to wear stuff that's light. Good news is that they've got as vast a collection for Michigan as they do any school on their site, whether it's the T-shirts. I see baseball jerseys on there. There's some really cool hats. There's, if you're a lighter color person, there's maize. There's a couple white T-shirts in there. It's all there for you. So use that promo code Wolverine to get 15% off your first order today over at HomefieldApparel.com. Spring cleaning time. You're going to clean out all your drawers. Make room for the great products at HomefieldApparel.com. Well, fellas, it's not often that we take the airwaves, and there's really not one particular story to sink our teeth into. So today is going to be a bit of a grab bag. We went to the Fort, our premium message board, and asked the people to come up with some questions for us today, which is always a frightening proposition when you head on over to the Fort and get some of the opinions, the questions of some of the people, men, women, and also, we have a mythical creature. There's a Sasquatch on our board. You never know what you're going to get. Children. So today's going to be a bit of a grab bag. We're going to take all of them, and I might have a few. And if there's a few that any of us have at any point for each other, you know what? It's a nice summery feeling day. Just let it rip. But we're going to start with one here from our guy, CT Blue 72. And he wants to know, how could the NCAA qualify deleting a text thread as being uncooperative to an NCAA investigation that hadn't launched yet? And he also asked if Moore disassociated himself When ESPN first reported the Connor Stallions news, there was no investigation underway just yet at that time. So where is the quote-unquote crime?
Yeah, there isn't one. And that's the funny part about it. And that's what I wrote today in my column. It's kind of, I think Sharon Moore is more the victim of being the Michigan head coach at this time when the NCAA is looking for a pound of flesh, right? They got to punish somebody. They aren't going to take away wins. At least that's what everybody said on both sides. As everybody has always said, the NCAA can do what they want to do. That's never been on the table from what we understand and what we've been told by people on both sides, what Pete Thamels and ESPN and everybody else has reported as well. Postseason ban was something that was brought up a long, long time ago and disappeared quickly. It's very clear that that's something that Michigan would fight, and that has not really been on the table either. So what's left to punish, right? You've got Jim Harbaugh, who's going to get a show cause, most likely. You've got Connor Stallions, who is undoubtedly going to get a show cause. And then you've got the head coach at Michigan. And one way to punish Michigan is to punish the head coach. And this is one way to get that pound of flesh. So it's crazy, right? If you look at the things that he's done compared to what goes on around the country in terms of early contact with recruits, which I think was what Jesse Minter got a show cause for that. And I guess it was more that he wasn't forward about it initially, but, and then just deleting a text thread, there's nothing to punish here, right? You can say, well, okay, maybe don't do it again. And maybe you get a letter of admonishment or something like that. But because he's the Michigan head coach now, when the NCAA needs to prove itself and throw its weight around, I think he's the target. And we wrote that was probably going to be the case months ago, and that's the case now. So it's stupid. I agree, but this is where it has to end. And as I wrote again, guys, if you're doing this and if you're agreeing to this, then you need an assurance, right, from the NCAA that this is where it stops, because at this point it's gotten ridiculous.
Yeah. And I remember that week pretty vividly in terms of the timeline. So it seems like Thursday morning, that was before the Michigan State game in 2023, the report came out that Michigan's under investigation. I think, Michigan State was thinking of not playing, soft, obviously, on their part that weekend. And then on Friday, the next day, it came out that Connor Stallions was kind of at the center of all this. And that's the day that Sharon Moore deleted the text messages. So I believe an investigation did start at that point. I'm not sure what was communicated between the NCAA and Michigan, and then Michigan to their staff. Like, did they send a memo saying, hey, we're going to be turning over a lot of devices, a lot of different things. Don't do anything to them. I don't know. If there was no investigation started, I don't think they'd have any grounds here. That said, it's still ridiculous. Deleting, but then ultimately turning over texts that prove or show nothing, no knowledge or involvement. Like you said, it's just like, yeah, they're trying to get Michigan on something. I mean, they had to get Jesse Minter and Steve Klinkskill on minor recruiting violations because that's what they found on their phones, and they want to, they want their pound of flesh. So let's get them on whatever we can. So it seems like that's what it is here. But 2 games plus the 2 weeks leading into those games for this feels like an incredibly harsh punishment for essentially doing nothing wrong. And like I said on I think last week's show, like. The NCAA in some ways almost has more power than the government in a certain sense, because every school is, voluntarily a part of the NCAA, and they don't have subpoena power, so that you pretty much have to turn over whatever they want you to and cooperate in the manner they want you to. Otherwise, they can punish you however they want to. So I think that's what is happening here. And, if 2 games isn't enough, which already seems harsh, that's ridiculous. And seems like it might end up being more than 2 games. Hopefully for Michigan's sake, it's in, seasons in the future, not in 2025, that he would serve games beyond 2. But just a crazy thing for
it wouldn't be the appeal, Clay. And if it comes to that, then you're pushing it off. But like I was just going to say, there's no guarantee they accept the 2 games. And that's the craziest part about it. They were still at 6, a few weeks ago, where, okay, they want him out for half the year, and which is absurd to me. And again, is more of him being the victim of being the Michigan head coach than anything that he's done wrong. But that's the craziest part. And that's why I think Michigan kind of sweetened the pot, so to speak, in proposing some of these recruiting restrictions that we were talking about last week in our columns. So it's stupid, but they got to get it behind them, fellas. This has gone on long enough, and the NCAA will come back with its ruling I think at the end of August it is, after the committee that they go in front of the committee on infractions. So that's when we'll know if this is over or if Michigan's going to be appealing and then maybe going to litigation. You hope, right? You hope that they put it behind them. And to me, I don't think 2 games is going to cut it. I think the NCAA is going to want 3 or 4.
Well, putting it behind them though, but getting something like even worse of a punishment, I'd rather drag it out and get maybe a better fate.
Maybe,
me, I mean,
except that then it's in the news, and does it affect recruiting, and does it, people are going to hold it over their heads, and yeah, but I'm with you, right? If it's 4 games, say it were 6 games, right? They came back and it's 6 games. I'd say to hell with that. No, then you fight it. If it's 3, I think you take it. If it's 4, then I think it's questionable. But that's up to the Michigan lawyers, and that's up to Michigan to just determine what direction they're going to go.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous for an offense committed, and even I'll say offense in quotation marks, something committed when you were an assistant. Now all of a sudden there's head coach responsibility, and they need that pound of flesh there. You got your pound of flesh already. Jim Harbaugh sat out 3 games at the end of the season. He sat out the 3 to start the season for, albeit a different case. He's going to get show cause to holy hell, and he's probably not coming back to college football anytime soon anyways. So for me, it's all performative, and it's part of the reason why, you hear this timeline of committee on infractions, June 6th, 7th, and then late August is the ruling. Because this has all been performative, that ruling is going to come down during the first game week because it is performative. And, the fact that they haven't been able to nail Michigan on, a smoking gun of who is involved in what, and this, the whole integrity of the game and all those types of things, they're going for these. It's not even a micro punishment, but it's just tacking stuff on in the aggregate, almost to drag it out and make it a little more painful. Because in my opinion, it is performative. So yeah, anything more than I already think the 2 games that Michigan has, offered to self-impose, I think that's too much. I think that's kind of shooting yourself in the foot to begin with, because now you're giving the NCAA something to start from and tack onto, as they tend to do. But for anything more than, like you said, 3, I think is, I'm going to go to court over that. And I'm going to bet that my case won't be solved when you are ultimately dissolved, because that's what the NCAA will be before too long. So well-plowed grounds there. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on sign stealing or Sharon Moore or Jim Harbaugh. I know we barely talk about it around here.
Yeah. Nope. I think it's next. What's up? Let's see what some of these other wackos have to say out there on the board.
All right, wacko.
To go back to the timeline real quick, if Sharon Moore's texts had anything in them that were damning for him, which they obviously didn't, and Yahoo's already reported on the content of any of the notable texts, he would have deleted the text the day that the investigation launched, but he waited a day until it comes out that Connor Stallions had done something. He got suspended. He deletes the text. It kind of shows, if he would have done it, if he didn't do it the day that the investigation came out, he might not even have known who was involved in this. It's you learn, hey, your program's under investigation. It's oh, shoot, what happened? And then the next day, oh, it was Connor, and he deletes the text, and he said he was angry at Stallions and all that. The timeline there, lends more credence to the fact that Sharon Moore had no idea what was going on anyway. And then you could get into, what did Connor Stallions actually do wrong? They're obviously contesting a lot of those allegations in there. They say 52 games, I think. Stallions in Michigan are saying it was about 8 games or something like that. So, I mean, there are so many layers to this, but that timeline right there really, should help Sharon Moore's case and beyond the contents of the text, which already help his case. So the whole thing is kind of a sham.
Yeah. And I get, again, and the NCAA is not the FBI. They're not the police. You can't put it to the same standard of, if you go to an active crime scene and you tamper with the scene, even if you're not tampering directly with what's at the scene or the evidence that was left behind, you still tampered with the scene and the investigation. If that's their rationale for, it looks bad because we were going to investigate. that's a crock of shit, and we've said that from the start. So, moving on to I say this affectionately, wacko number 2, which is Mellow Web 2, and it goes right back to the case we're just talking about. At some point, do we acknowledge that there is at least some negative recruiting going on? There's no way that the upcoming Committee on Infractions and any resulting penalties aren't being mentioned on the trail. Of course it is. This is normal stuff. If there wasn't an investigation, there'd be some kind of negative recruiting. So yeah. I'm sure that's part of it. But as we know, there are layers to that as well.
There are, and I think it's part of that. I think it's part of Michigan's kind of waiting to see what happens with the resolution in the House, right? But the usual suspects out there are saying Michigan's going to get the hammer and blah, 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 blah. And all you got to do is read the idiot blogs and to find out that Michigan's going to get the hammer. So, which we, again, have said many times, if right now the NCAA is focused on Sharon Moore with their punishments. So there's no doubt in my mind. So it sucks. It is what it is. At the end of the day, fellas, money's what talks, especially in this day and age. And if and when Michigan decides to really ramp up its efforts there and be competitive with recruits, they're going to land recruits. That's just the way it is. So that's, to me, but negative recruiting comes with the territory. It is what it is, and Michigan's an easy target right now. And that's what I mean about dragging this thing out, though, right? Get it behind you, and then get back, and you've got Sharon Moore out there on the recruiting trail. He's not missing Friday nights in September and October like they were talking about, maybe doing and things like that, recruiting visits, slashing those and all that. So, that's there's no question that's going on.
I mean, I don't know that there's anyone out there not acknowledging that negative recruiting goes on pretty much all the time from pretty much every program. And this is something you can negative recruit for. So, it's a little bit of fuel, but there's plenty to go around for almost every team in the country. You're constantly battling that. I think for the most part, Michigan's done a really good job, just telling recruits what's going on and that, they're going to be fine. And they just pulled in the number 6 class in the country last year. They're going to have a great class this year. There's no question in my mind about that. So they've done a good job navigating this. But yeah, it's an extra element. It's extra set of questions that you got to answer. And, but I think they're probably used to it by now. These investigations have been going on for a couple of years. So they've got some experience. And, guys like Lou Esposito and Lamar Morgan, guys that joined the staff last year, they got a year under their belt answering those questions. And everyone's got the experience that they need to figure this out and just keep, it's about relationships and money at this point, and they've done a good job on both fronts.
Yeah, and like you said, it's something they're used to. It'll come when this passes. There'll be something they're negative recruited for. I think at the end of the day, what they can sell is that despite all of the noise, 52 draft picks over the last 6 years. I think you have a lot of good guys that have been very happy with their experience there. And, the well-informed will make their decisions based on that sort of data instead of what some of the naysayers are saying, so to speak. We'll move on to another one. This time, it's the aforementioned creature of the woods himself. Sasquatch 616 wants to know, what are the 2 most important toppings on a burger? You already get cheese if you want it. What comes next?
Clay, I'm going to defer to you to go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I am one of billions that enjoy burgers. So I can answer this. And I will say, to me, number 1's ketchup. I got shamed a couple weeks ago. I was having a brat, put ketchup on it. You get shamed for that. People in Chicago, you don't have the ketchup on hot dogs, but ketchup on burgers, I think, pretty universally accepted. And then lettuce is number 2 for me. If I had to go beyond 2 to extend past the question here, I'd go onion and pickle as my power rankings. That's my Mount Rushmore, but that's just like my order. I mean, there are a lot of toppings out there, preferably grilled onions, by the way.
Gotta have, what'd you say, grilled?
Preferably grilled if I had to choose between regular.
All right, I'm ketchup and raw onion. Actually, I need raw onion on a burger now. My dad, back in the day, you know what? He was all about it. I didn't like it. Now, guess what? We all become like our fathers, I think. So, ketchup and onion for me are the absolutely 2 have-to-haves. And Nope.
You
I
want a
like
dice?
I like a big old slice, man.
Okay. Yep.
And I got to have an extra piece of cheese on there too. So just to clog an artery.
Yeah, why not? I want to park there for a second on the onion. Is the raw onion like a crunch thing?
No, I
that
like
the
the
issue?
taste too, man. I like the taste. I like the crunch. I think it adds to the burger, brings out the flavor of the meat a little bit. So it's hard to describe, man. But now if I get a burger, I'm like, man, I better have a slice of onion on there or I'm disappointed.
All right. It was either last summer or the summer before. I picked up a Blackstone on Facebook Market for like $70. And the guy's like, which is a steal. The guy's like, oh yeah, it's a little old. You just got to clean it up. Cleaned up super nice. Every once in a while, we'll wheel that out in the driveway and do the smash burger. I'm a big smash burger guy now. I think that those are the best burgers I've ever had that have come off that Blackstone or the smash variety. For me, I'll build 4. I'll give you a cheese. I'll give you 2 toppings and I'll give you a condiment. Give me Swiss cheese, give me grilled mushrooms and onions together. And then I'm a mayo guy on a burger. Yeah. It just brings it all together. So yeah, I'm partial to.
Can't go wrong with a mushroom and Swiss burger, AB.
No, you cannot. So I might go make that after this actually. Right? But I don't. Are we sleeping on any burger items or condiments there?
Bacon.
I'm an American cheese guy, I will say.
Yeah, me too. Bacon, extra cheese, bacon. Clog. You might as well clog it if you're going to clog the artery, right? So get the bacon on there, soft, not crispy.
Counter argument: bacon kind of takes away from the taste a little bit.
Does it?
Okay. It overwhelms.
Yeah, and I don't have it very often. Once in a great while, but once in a while if you're really hungry. And I will say this: I love a freaking fried egg. I love a fried egg.
I was just about to say that fried egg. That's a game changer.
We
know Harbaugh's a fried egg guy.
Absolutely. That makes the freaking, if you're going to do the bacon, then you got to do the fried egg too with the extra cheese. And then, you know what? Then you're going to the hospital. But hey, it's worth it.
You know what? If there are worse last meals to have.
Yes.
So, all right. That's burger talk this week. I love it. Let's move to Hoops coach N3D, who says, if Yaxel Lendeborg decides to stay in the draft, do you think Dusty could use more of a 4-guard lineup as he did back in his FAU days? He says Mara and Johnson, as of right now, seem like their skill sets may not fit as well playing long stretches together, and I like Will's energy off the bench more than being a starter.
I think he will experiment with Mara and Johnson together a little bit. Is it going to be Wolf and Golden? No, right? Danny Wolf's got a unique skill set. Does that mean that he won't? I mean, we saw him experiment with 3 big guys, right? With Will Cheddar and the 2 bigs last year. So that'll be one of the lineups that they look at. 4 guards, absolutely. I think he will do that. And I think out of necessity, he's going to have to do that. One thing he told me in our sit down was like when they were struggling, that they still had to go with the guys that got them there, right? And he said there's no way around it, right? That you've got to play your best players and hope that they get their mojo back. So with Roddy Gale, for example, when people were trying to say he needs to be benched, he said, we aren't winning anything if Roddy Gale doesn't play the way that Roddy Gale needs to play. So he's going to continue to experiment with different lineups, but there's no doubt in my mind that they will play small at times and that they're going to have to.
And coming into last year, like he had talked a lot in his preseason press conference about, we have all the answers to, like, we feel like we have positional versatility on this team. We have different lineup combinations we can use. And then as the season played out, I mean, there were hardly any examples that going small was the right way to go because your 2 best players were your 2 bigs. And, you had to do it at times. Vlad was sick for that Penn State game. They went smaller and it didn't work as well. Danny had to play the 5. You had Cheddar in there for much too long than I think is best for the team. And there were a couple other times when they had foul trouble. But other than that, like, you knew your best lineup in pretty much any circumstance. I don't think it's going to be like that next year. I think that you're going to, tinker a little bit with the lineups, especially early in the season, figure out what works. And we're talking here in the hypothetical that Lendeborg doesn't come to Michigan. Because, I don't know that Will Cheddar, that you trust him for 30 minutes a game. Oscar Goodman will, pretty much be a true freshman, kind of like a little bit of a redshirt freshman. He's only here for a semester, still, kind of the age of, I believe, of a regular freshman. So you have, some question marks at that spot. Could you go with Roddy Gale at the 4 for some stretches? It's going to be tough defensively, depending on who you're playing. but you help a little bit more. You're going to have to be better in your rotations. I think it's really interesting. And I think based on the way they were talking before last year, they planned on experimenting a little bit more with some of those combinations, but they didn't really need to because it became so apparent right away that the big guys had to be on the floor for every possible minute that you could squeeze out of them, and it worked out. And then the other stuff was like you mentioned, Chris, like the Roddy Gale, Rubin. You had to do a little bit of tinkering there, but as far as big or small, like big was better for Michigan last year. Might not be the case next year. It might be a little bit more situation oriented. It's going to be really fascinating to watch.
I don't know what he's going to do if Yaxel stays in the draft, but there will be a plan. Pretty confident in that. And if it means you got more shooters, more guards on the floor, I think they'll find a way to make that work. So whatever that best configuration is, I'm pretty confident they'll have that. So,
and it's about guarding almost,
Trusty and like yeah, you are who you can guard, right? So,
right.
Yep.
Pretty much.
And you go look back to when Zach Novak was guarding fours and doing it at a pretty damn high level at 6'2.5", he told me in shoes.
And what was he listed at?
Yeah, he was listed like 6'4", I think.
Right,
yeah.
And he wasn't anywhere near.
I think he was 6'2", he said, and it's like, all right, I asked him a couple of years ago, so he gave us a great recommendation for when we were in Chesterton, if you recall. What was the name of that place? Name? I do not. What was it?
Wagner's Ribs, but we were pronouncing it Wagner because we're
Wagner's Ribs, exactly.
It was so good. I got the ribs, had to.
Yes, and I did too. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you got steak and ribs or something like that. It was so good. Speaking of grilling,
that was for the other artery. So
that was on our way to Champaign for the football game. We
decided we'd stop at a nice town on the way down there since we had to go to Champaign. So all right, next. Sorry, Champaign crew on the board. Yep. Continue.
That's outstanding. I'm glad you guys got to experience that together.
Yeah.
Before the Red Grange game the next day, it was depressing.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, that's it happens. Another one from Sasquatch, and this is actually to his credit, pretty buttoned up for his standards. He says, "How detrimental to the team, in particular to the win and loss columns, do you expect Sharon Moore's suspension to be? For now, let's just assume he is out for the first 4 weeks based on Chris's article earlier. Do you think the record will be any worse than it would have been if he was on the sidelines? And do you think the record will still suffer even if he returns due to any sort of hangover from his absence?"
That's just a prediction, by the way, on, that, okay, if the NCAA isn't agreeing to which they are not, from what we've heard, right, or not, it doesn't look good. Maybe it looks a little bit better if Michigan sweetens the pot with some recruiting restrictions for him. But my prediction is, it's going to be maybe 3 or 4. So it sure as hell doesn't help, right, because he's not going to be involved in the day-to-day putting together of the game plan. Jim Harbaugh was able to do that. They changed the rule. Did they call it the Harbaugh rule now? I don't know, but they probably should. So clearly it didn't work for them to keep Michigan from winning games without their head coach. So they've got to do something a little bit more to make it tougher. But 2 of the games are layups, with all due respect to your Central Michigan Chips there, Anthony. And the other 2 we're going to be tough either way. And I think it would have been really helpful. It would be really helpful to have Sharon Moore on the sidelines against Oklahoma. I think they would want to win that game for him. They might want to anyway, even if he's gone. So to me, it comes down to, okay, how much do you trust the people that you have in place? And we knew when Jim Harbaugh wasn't coaching, it was going to be a loss, but he had trained his guys so well, and the team was so good that they could go on and win without him. Is this team in that position at this point? You got a first-year coordinator. I don't know. I don't even know who the head coach would be. It's tough to figure out if it's going to be Biff Poggi. Is it going to be Chip Lindsey? To me, it should be the offensive coordinator. I think the defense is in great hands with Wink Martindale, and that's going to kind of take care of itself. So let him do that. But when it comes to a game and the flow of it, I want the offensive coordinator out there, and I would trust Chip Lindsey. So would it be detrimental? Yes. Would it be a death knell? I don't think so.
I think it'd be really tough. And even with the Jim Harbaugh part of this, when you look back to 2023 as an example, right, they played a lot better late in the year without him than they did, relative to the competition. Like, there was some clunkiness early in the year. They won those games pretty easily. Bowling Green was a little bit of a struggle for a while. They threw 3 picks. but it felt like things were a little more off almost early in the year without him than late in the year. That team was just, kind of clicking, and they were ready for those big games. Penn State came around, and, but part of that was because he was in the building all week. He was at the team hotel in Happy Valley. He was circling the stadium, waiting to see if he was going to get his injunction to come into Beaver Stadium. And then I believe he flew to Maryland the next week, and then he met him back at the tarmac after. Like, that is way different than if you had 3 or 4 games to start the year before you've built an identity, before you've gotten in a groove, before you've gotten in a routine for the season throughout the week, let alone on game day. Like, that's really hard. And like you said, like, even in 23, we talked about this last week, the staff had future head coaches on it, guys that are head coaches now, like Sharon Moore. This staff isn't as veteran, other than, guys like Wink Martindale. There are plenty of them with a ton of experience, but I don't know who the next head coach is from this team. So it's different. The circumstances are different. And, I think that if you look at the 2 tough games in that stretch, if it were for Oklahoma and then Nebraska, we know he's going to be out for Nebraska if things go according to plan. At this point, like, those are high stakes games, because then you're going to have ground to make up if you lose 1 or 2 of them. And then he comes back, and then maybe there's some clunkiness with, figuring that out. And okay, now you got your head coach back. Like, it could just be one of those weird years that you look back again, almost like last year afterwards, and you say, man, what could have been with that season? So it's unfortunate. I think it has a huge impact, more than a lot of people realize when it comes to the stuff during the week.
I mean, I would be concerned if it winds up being in a scenario where it is 4 games. We're not reporting it's 4 games. It's just, it's a talking point. And it's part of the question. That worries me more than anything, because 2 of those are what I think are extremely difficult road games. You're trying to establish this battle rhythm of, rolling, getting into the month of October, and then getting through mid-October, and then that stretch run late where, this schedule sets up where it's home away the entire year. There's no soft landing anywhere. Even if the schedule itself in the aggregate is easier than last year, you have those 6 road trips to make, and those first 3 are Oklahoma's going to be a tough game, and they're going to be a popular college football playoff pick heading into this year. Nebraska, you think should be improved. We'll see what type of step they take, but that's a tough environment to play in. Going out west, we saw even just last year, at Washington, that wasn't a very good football team, but you struggled out there. And I think this USC team they'll play is going to be better than that Washington team was. So if you have a 4-game suspension, and then Sharon Moore comes back, and you come out of that first half of the schedule at 3-3 in a year where we talked about this before, he needs to win, and they need to win and prove that last 3 games wasn't just, lightning in a bottle. That is concerning to me. And that would be very disruptive to the outlook and the range of outcomes for next year. So
the only thing I'll say about the who's the next head coach thing, you've got 2 coordinators this time around that have unbelievable experience, right? And preparing years and years and years of experience in football knowledge. So that makes me feel a little bit better too.
Yeah, and Chip Lindsey's been a head coach, and Wink Martindale could be at some level. He just was in the NFL for a long time. So maybe it's unfair of me to say that.
You feel a lot better about the adults in the room than if this had happened last year.
Exactly, 100%.
Somewhat similar, but Lindsey's head coaching experience is big, and Biff coming back, yeah.
Well, regardless, the point stands. You don't want your head coach suspended at all. So,
nope.
Last one we'll take from our guy, Jacob Sherba. We love you, Jacob. Thank you for the question. He says, there's understandably been a lot of talk around the offensive line heading into this season, especially at tackle. It feels reminiscent of the talk headed into last season, and we all saw how offensive line play subsequently failed to meet expectations. Do you get the impression that Newsome and Moore's evaluation of the state of line play is more accurate or more positive than last year? Or do you think that the lack of portal pursuit is ultimately more due to the market being too steep for high-level offensive line players?
I think it's B, and I think it's unfortunate. And I said this about the quarterbacks last year, that they needed to go to the portal and get somebody. And I will say that again about that. If there's an undoing to this offense this year, it's going to be the fact that they didn't go out and land a couple of these guys. And basically what it was the price for these guys. We'd heard like million floor, right? For some offensive linemen who were good, but not elite, So, but I guess it all comes back to where you're allocating your funds. And I think what they would argue, I know what they would argue right now, is that they had to pay a little bit more money just to keep their guys here, fellas, in the spring so they didn't have a whole lot left over to spend. I thought they would add a receiver. There was one in particular that they had their eye on. I thought they would add at least one more lineman. And, at the end, they were talking about adding a corner. So, and I don't think any of these things are going to happen, and certainly not to the level that's going to help elevate your team, not even like an Amir Hall, right? So at corner. But so I think it is the latter. I think they're going to roll with what they've got. I hope it's not a mistake, because I am not bullish on this offensive line, and I hope to God they prove me wrong. And this is not being negative. This is just calling it like we see it, guys. And if Evan Link is your left tackle going into next season, and I love his effort and I love how hard he plays, to me, that's a major concern. I'm not convinced that they are good enough at center, with all due respect to Greg Crippen. And Gio El-Hadi better have a really good year. I know that I think he won Lineman of the Year last year, which surprised me. I thought it should have been Miles Hinton probably, but they need better play left to right. When the guy that you feel the best about is Andrew Sprague, I think a true sophomore next year, then to me, it's a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, redshirt freshman, Andrew Sprague. And
right.
I think that you bring up some interesting points. Like, college football has changed in the sense of, like, it's not just the top programs adding. There are consequences, because you do have so much money, right? You can raise as much as you want, at least until the House settlement is complete, and then might be a different set of rules, but people still get around it. Like, if you were to have added an offensive lineman for $1.3 million, but lost a defensive lineman or whatever position you want to pick, and then the season played out. The thing is, too, the season plays out only one way, and we can all go back and say they should have done this or they should have done that, but we don't know what the next domino would have been of whatever move it is. So my point is, Sharon Moore is incredible at evaluating an offensive line. When he was the line coach, and they kept getting transfers every year at different positions, even when you thought they had pretty good talent there, and they actually had 7-8 starting caliber players in 2022 and 3, and but he was the most aggressive assistant coach in the transfer portal at that time. He understood what they needed. He's often talked about, you need 10 offensive linemen to get through a season. And looking back, last year you started 8 or 9, and in 2023 they started 8 or 9. One of them was 8, one of them was 9. I can't remember right off the top of my head which one was which, but in the good years you started 8 or 9. In the bad year you started 8 or 9. So depth is important. I don't know that they're quite there yet. I think they probably understand that, but they also understand that actions have consequences in today's college football, and a lot of teams don't have the depth they'd like right now, because you can go, you can be a starter on a national championship game team like Notre Dame, and be like, okay, you're 50-50 to start next year. We got these other young guys coming up. Maybe they're going to pass you up, and you go elsewhere. That's Notre Dame, right? They lost their depth. So it's happening to everybody. But long-winded way of saying, no, I think it's B as well. I agree with you, Chris. I think that, there's just, at a certain point, you did add pretty good talent in December, and in the spring, maybe you didn't have as much resources, me guessing there, that, as many resources as you would have liked.
I think it's B as well. I do think there are hints of column A in there, just in terms of allocation of resources. We spent our NIL at the end of the recruiting cycle on Andrew Babalola and getting Ty Haywood in there. And those are maybe, if the choice is, and I'm not saying it has to be either or, but if the choice is, hey, I can spend, I don't know, just X amount on a guy who we're going to have him in our building from day one. We'd have our fingerprints all over his development, which some people would argue that's a concern too. But regardless, a guy that you get to have for a few years, and then if he performs well, you reward him, you pay him more, and that's where the budget goes to. I can get on board with that. I do think that they missed an opportunity somewhere just to add one piece, one more starting caliber piece. I think could have, I don't want to say they're back to Joe Moore awards or anything like that, but maybe stabilize it, give you a little versatility, give you a little bit more with your combinations, because as we sit here and we tinker with, what if they put this guy at right guard, and then you kick this guy out here, and you do all that. It just seems like in all of those combinations that we do and we can come up with right now, there's some kind of weak link or deficiency somewhere. And it's, this is performance based and results based. We're not bashing anyone. We're not bashing their job, bringing guys in, but we all saw what it looked like on the field last year. So a lot of improvement needed there. I think, Chris, I think you're dead on where last year you looked at the roster, it just screamed there needs to be at least a replacement level quarterback here, and they couldn't find that. This year, I feel like the offensive line fits that category, replacement level guys somewhere. I think hopefully we're not lamenting that at the end of the season. But fellas, I think that's it. A lot of good questions this week. A lot of, to be honest, a little more time filled than I thought there would be, thanks to Burger Talk. So
love Burger Talk. I do want to say one thing: the weak link, no pun intended, right on that one, on the offensive line. And
I wasn't inferring anything by that.
Exactly. And but when you were talking and you brought it up, you better be ready to renegotiate contracts, right? Like you said, AB, if you're going to go that route where you're going to get these 5-star linemen, and we saw it again this spring where guys had signed deals, but other guys came in and they said, okay, you know what, these aren't binding, and we're just going to go ahead and somebody else is going to offer me more money, then I'm going to consider leaving. So that's something that you're going to have to be prepared to do too.
Well, and you don't want to develop a guy and then get sniped a year into his development.
Right, exactly. So, hey, we got our left tackle of the future, and by the way, next year he's playing at LSU or something,
So you can't bank on anything. Like everything's kind of a 1-year thing.
Sucks.
I mean, you have your sights set on developing Andrew Babalola for 3-4 years. I would imagine he stays because, top programs retain top talent. It's been pretty much the case. It's why you don't grab starter level at every position in the transfer portal. There are 1 or 2 out there, and then you got to, find guys that you evaluate at a high level. But, you think of, I was doing this on the basketball side. I was looking at this like since 2017 or so. Close to 75% of the freshmen Michigan brought in basketball played and finished their college career somewhere else. Like football's a little bit lower just because it's a different sport, more spots. You wait your turn a little bit more. Guys understand that at certain positions. But this is what's going on in college sports. It's insane. So banking on that is still a gamble too. Banking on, going the freshman route and developing.
I don't disagree with any of that, but maybe we'll dive more into that conversation next week when we also talk pizza toppings and your favorite baseball players from the 1980 Detroit Tiger squad. So
here's a spoiler: pepperoni is not one of them. So there you go.
Well, I don't want to tug on that thread today. We'll be here another hour or so. Right. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for $1. It's the best deal in America. And I talked earlier about pre-ordering our football preview magazine. If you are a subscriber of the site and you're on the fort, there's an additional deal there for you that only folks in the know are aware of. So 2 benefits in one with some of our in-house announcements today. But I'll be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more. We'll be back later this week for more. Well, who knows what will happen the next few days. It's always unpredictable this time of year. But for Chris Ballas, for Clayton Safey, our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you again next time.